Hello and welcome to Five Writers, 5 Minutes, where five writers give you their top writing tips. And today we're going to talk about soggy middles in your story. And I know you all know what that is. Might have an exciting start where the problem or the conflict presents itself and your character must grapple with it. And you might have a sort of sizzling end where they must really rise to the occasion and deal with the moment of extreme crisis. But sometimes the bit in between the beginning and the end can get a little bit saggy, a little bit soggy, a little bit boring. And what do we do with that soggy middle? My name's Sarah Armstrong.
I'm Zanni Louise.
I'm Tristan Bancks.
I'm Deborah Abela.
And I'm Lian Tanner.
Zanni, can you tell us first what you do with the soggy middle?
I think for me, it's a combination of two things. So one is I do a bit of planning. I don't sit there and, write a full kind of structure or plan in such detail that I know perhaps Deb does. But I definitely come up with a synopsis, which I know addresses the core elements of story structure. So I'm using the basic kind of 3-act story structure, which is the first, second, and third act. So the second act is really important. It's like the crux of the journey. You do need to be implementing lots of obstacles and things throughout that. And often there's a midpoint as well, which is, a significant turning point for the character. So I have those key points mapped out in my synopsis before I start writing the whole thing. So as I'm writing, I tend to write quite quickly. So it affords me time to overwrite. So I'll write through that soggy middle as fast as I can, and I'll be bored at some point and I'll know, oh, hang on, I've lost my way. This isn't working. Back to where it was interesting. Let's start again. And I'll do it again and I'll do it again until I get to the point where it's like, no, now I'm excited to keep going into the third act. So I kind of have to trick myself into it. But for me, it's that speed of writing helps me stay focused and gives me the momentum I need. A bit like if you're taking a big run up a hill, you need to kind of get that momentum going. How about you, Tristan? What works for you?
I actually just reread a zero draft of a sequel to my book Two Wolves that I've written, and it's a zero draft, so it's just exploratory. I'm just trying stuff out and it's all over the place, but the opening is I'm sort of leaning into, and then right up to the point where there's like an inciting incident where something sends the story off in a new direction, and that sends me off into the second act of my story, which is like half the story right in the middle there. And that is where I got bored reading it, and I was like, oh, and there's scene after scene and things were happening, but I didn't care. The thing that I noticed was that I didn't care anymore what happened to the characters. They were talking and they were doing things, but I didn't care what happened to them. And I realized that in the next pass, I'm going to have to get down to tapping back into what the characters want, tapping back into making it harder for them to get what they want, and also making sure that they stand to lose something. So want and conflict and stakes. And I know we've spoken about these things before, but they're very simple tools that anyone can use, and they really will help drive you through that midsection. I'll probably get to a point where I'm stating the want and the conflict and stakes too much, and I'll be mentioning it in every second sentence, and then I'll have to pare back, and I'll be like, I'll find that middle ground where I've got enough driving me through, but I'm not going on and on and on about what the character wants. Yeah, they're my tips.
Yeah, and I think too, don't worry about it too much. Like obviously, Tristan, you're just finding your way with your, this new book, right? And so I try not to give myself too much of a hard time at the beginning. And I do plan, as Zanni said, so I do actually have, hopefully, what I try to do is something in each chapter that makes that chapter earn its place in that story. But it doesn't mean that when I then finally write that chapter, it actually is any good. So I just try not to worry about it too much in the first draft, and because that's what your lovely second draft is. Let's tear it apart. Let's see what, in fact, maybe what I've got happening is, as a really exciting thing in Act 2, maybe that should be brought forward, or so just write it first, of course, and enjoy the process. And it's lovely when you do go back and go, okay, that is actually a bit soggy. I'm actually a bit bored. My mind's now wandering to what I'm having for dinner. So it's a process. It's a fantastic, lovely, gorgeous, messy, terrible process.
That's a good tip, not to give yourself a hard time, because you can fall into I'm a terrible writer kind of stuff.
Yeah, way too easily.
Yeah.
Look, I'm really relating to all of this, but particularly to what you said, Zanni, because I find that if the middle of one of my stories is soggy, it's usually because something further back in the story isn't right.
Right.
And it's like building a house. You know, you have to have strong foundations.
Yes.
So I'll go back and this is coming to what Tristan said, I'll go back and look at whatever's driving my character, and I'll try to make it more important so that they will be more urgent about it. And then maybe in trying to get what they want, maybe they'll do something risky that gets them into a dangerous situation. So that kind of really changes things. The other thing I like doing is bringing in a surprise of some sort, like maybe somebody who seemed to be on the side of my hero turns out to be a villain, or vice versa. Or maybe my main character fails really badly at what they're trying to do, but in the process, they learn something that helps them take the next step. So I actually find that soggy middles are a really good challenge. I don't mind them because they make me push my story in more interesting directions, and that is always a good thing.
That is good.
I love that. I love that idea of just letting your character take a bit more of a risk. And that's good the way you've articulated that. I sometimes think about what else can happen to make things worse for my character. So let's say you had a bunch of kids, let's say there's a storm or a flood, a bunch of kids are sheltering in the school library, and it's already bad. They're having to stay overnight in the library. The wind is lashing at and rain are lashing at the windows. Oh, what if then the roof fell in? Let's make it much, much worse. Like, it's a soggy middle means the action is sort of stagnated or gone still and flat. So you want something to happen, like either something big external, like, oh, the roof fell in, or someone's gone missing in the middle of all this, or your character does something that brings in some excitement. And I agree totally on the surprising thing. With Magic Arrived, there was this point that was a little bit soggy, and I'm like, I need a surprise here. So I brought in a character who no one was expecting to turn up there, and it was just this moment, I know, for readers of surprise. And I just do come back to those foundations, like the foundations of the story. If they're solid, then your soggy middle will be much easier to fix. It's almost always we come back to what the character wants, what's driving them, and this question of how you can create some tension or unanswered questions through that middle.
That's
that will
great.
grab readers' attention always, which is what you want to hang on to. Thanks, everyone. Awesome tips on drying out your soggy middles. Hope you're doing your writing. We will see you soon.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.